Hello, everybody. Wanted to give a quick shout out to all you good pastors on this Saturday pastors briefing. A couple things to share with you. I've got 5 things if you want to keep up, and I'm going to send kind of the outline of what I'm talking with you about today, along with the email I send out. But again, this is a briefing just to senior pastors, and so I don't post this on social media or anything like that. It's just between us, and it's because there's a special burden, responsibility, and privilege for being a senior pastor. And you guys are the Marines that are right on the front line, the tip of the spear. You're the ones that's facing the most onslaught of the enemy and the greatest challenges and hopefully the greatest benefits. That's my prayer, that it'll be worth it, the sacrifices you're making. So kudos to you. Love you. I'm proud of you. And let me just jump right in to what I want to talk to you about. I want to remind you, first of all, that July the 15th is tax day. It's been postponed, and so we've got to pay the piper. And so if you pay estimates, if you owe for 2019, make sure you get your money in. And then if you pay estimated taxes, make sure your church, if your treasurer or your accountant, whoever you have. But anyway, just remind you that July the 15th is tax day, and we need to take care of that. Just with the church family here, I want to give a shout out. We've got 3 big events next week in our lives. Brother Bob James, he will not be getting this video. I'll almost certainly give him a personal call, but on Monday, July the 13th, Brother James will have been an ordained bishop for 38 years in the Church of God. He's a father in our region, and if you wanted to give him a call, that would give you something to call and congratulate him and thank him for his many years of service. That's being an ordained bishop, so I don't know how long he was. Back in those days, you were exhorter, licensed, and ordained. And so I don't know how long he has been a credentialed minister in the Church of God, but I would dare say well over 40 years and maybe even longer. So one of the fathers of our region. On Thursday, Brother Jake Popejoy, who is now retired, a former administrative bishop in our region, well loved, and anyway, he has a birthday on Thursday, folks. So if you're interested, you might want to give him a shout out. And then one of our pastors, Brother Travis, there in Minot, July the 17th. That's the day, this coming Friday, that's the day he was born. That's his birthday. So that's just a little update on the church family here. Third thing, just be in prayer for me tomorrow. I'll be in Beulah, and I'll be taking a pastoral preference vote. And that, as we know by now, Brother Sansot has moved to Georgia. And so I've been working on that transition, and that could be resolved as soon as tomorrow. So be in prayer for Sanj and I and my granddaughter, Trinity. We're breaking her into the life of an administrative bishop in the North Central region. She's been doing a lot of traveling. But those are just sort of the housekeeping things. I've got 2 things I want to talk to you now about. I want to talk to you about yourself personally and then professionally. And the personal thing is I want to talk to you about your emotional health. And this was really brought home to me just a few days ago as one of our officials, wonderful Christian gentleman, and but long story short, beautiful family. He and his wife, 4 children, just a model family. But long story short, his wife had been dealing with depression. This is common knowledge, public knowledge, and so I'm not betraying the confidence here. But she got in the car, drove her car to a lake, drove in, and took her life. And that has just hit me so hard and reminded me of a lesson I had to learn. I hit the proverbial wall a number of years ago, and I realized that I had been taught all my life about how to take care of my body, how to grow spiritually, but nobody had ever really talked to me about my emotional health. And for the last 3 to 4 months, since March in particular, it started really in January, and we could hear the hints of this COVID-19, and But by March, I mean, we're shutting churches down. You guys are facing decisions you've never faced before. The constant pressure of, am I even going to survive personally, ministry-wise, my church? Just the incredible pressure that we've all been under. And I don't want to take it for granted that you're doing okay. And we can put on a good front, put on a good face, but there's a lot of uncertainty out there. And I want to talk to you a moment about taking care of yourself emotionally. And there's two things. You've got to protect yourself, and then you've got to also be proactive. Protection and proactivity. And I don't have the time to go into a long lesson here, but I want to put a couple things in your mind. But in protecting yourself, I want to remind you to be careful of the difference between news and commentary. And we all know that the tragedy there in Minneapolis, Black Lives Matter, and all the stuff that's going with that on right now. And then the presidential election is really ramping up, and then the COVID-19. And there's a lot of shouting at each other now across America. We're even shooting at each other. So it's a crazy, wacky world. And a lot of it is fed not by the news, but by the commentary. The news, it don't take but a moment to say what happened. But then we talk endlessly, and there's people that are news channel addicts. They just love to watch the news, and some of you are. You've told me you love to keep the news on all the time. But this may be a time that you need to protect yourself from the news. One of my most treasured books on leadership is The Contrarian's Guide to Leadership by Stephen Samples. I call it my Bible for leadership. And he has a whole chapter there where he talks about protecting yourself from the news. And he did this exercise. He says, I completely stopped listening to the news, reading the paper, checking anything on the internet. I listened to no news for 6 weeks, and I didn't miss a thing that really mattered. Because if it was important enough for me to know, somebody would always tell me. I'd be walking down the hall, they'd call me in casual conversation. I found out everything I needed to know from other people. I've tried that several times, and I don't hardly ever watch the news. I don't have any news feeds on my computer, on my phone. And because you've got to protect yourself from the emotional toll that takes just constantly listening to the commentary on the news and the political gesturing and going back and forth. And so I encourage you to remind yourself, is this news or is this just noise? Is this news that is going to matter in eternity, or is this news for the day? It's news, I stumped my toe. That's news for right now. News that I got my toe cut off. Now that's going to matter for the rest of your life. You've got to know the difference. And so then also not only know the difference between news and commentary or news and noise, but know the news that you really need to know on a need to know basis. You don't need to know everything. The psalmist said, I found peace when I quieted myself like a weaned child. That I don't have to be fed every moment. I don't have to be fed every time I feel a hunger pain. But I had to learn to trust my mom. And like a weaned child, calm yourself. You don't have to know everything. And now my other computer's talking to us there. You're going to have to deal with that. I am not going to record all this over again. But so look at news on a need-to-know basis. I'll give you an example. We've got youth camp coming up in August. And so every day I monitor the COVID-19 stats here in North Dakota and South Dakota and in Montana. And I'm monitoring it. And right now the game plan is to have youth camp. I've got ministers meeting coming up later in the year. And so that's the game plan. We're making plans and we're going forward. And I believe it'll be great if we can do it. But I am watching the trend line. And that's news I need to know so that I can make a good decision. So it is news that matters to me right now. So I keep an eye on that. And you've got news like that you need to keep up with. But the rest of it, the only time you have to make a political decision about the president is on the day you vote. The rest of the time, withhold judgment. Tune it out. Protect yourself emotionally. But then on the other hand, not only do we have to play good defense, but we have to have good offense. And so emotionally, Philippians 4:8 says, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are noble, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praiseworthy things, anything that's praiseworthy, think on these things. And so just not only to protect yourself from the news, but think on good things, the things you enjoy. It may be a hobby. It may be studying the Bible. Study joy. Do a deep dive into joy, into peace. But feed your mind on something that's good. Not only that, but find laughter. We know the verse. It's like good medicine. You have to go looking for laughter, not the caustic, cynical laughter that the world has. But find laughter. It may be some of the old Gilligan's Island kind of stuff, just mindless comedy. Yeah, I don't care as long as it's not illegal or immoral, but you've got to go looking for laughter. And then something that we've lost, find solace. We don't even use that word anymore. But it may be going in the outer doors, going out, having a quiet cup of coffee on your patio, going fishing, going hunting. Of course, we do our job, but life can't be just about fighting the issues of the day. You've got to learn to find solace. And so, brothers, I encourage you, and sisters, I encourage you to go on the offense in taking care of yourself emotionally. And then, just real quick, one little professional tip. I've done this for years, but I just recently read a book, and I'll put it in the email. It's called Peak. Secrets from the New Science of Expertise by Erickson Anders and Robert Poole. And one of the things that the people that perform at their peak performances, they practice a lot. They intentionally practice. And so I want to encourage you. I've done this for years, and when I don't do it, I get in trouble. But not only practice what you preach, but practice before you preach. I remember years ago in New Ellenton, South Carolina, they had, back down near Augusta, there was Fort Gordon, a veterans hospital. So they were sprinkled around Augusta, Georgia, were a lot of what we call veterans homes. And a lot of those guys, we now understand it better. We didn't understand it back then. This was back in the 80s. And some of them were even World War II veterans and Korean veterans. And they were going through all the trauma that they went through in wartime. And so some of those guys really had issues. And I remember this particular home, there was a lady in my church, and she just lived right down from me. And those men there was a constant stream going by the church and by the parsonage, going up to a little convenience store. And they'd go up there and buy their stuff and walk back. And a lot of those guys we would have said they were crazy back in those days. And they were not crazy. They were just troubled men. But anyway, I would go in my little church there in New Ellenton, and I would preach my sermon almost every day. I'd preach my sermon. I preached it many times, and I would get into it, man. I was preaching and just putting myself into it like the house was full. And those guys would walk by. It was a small church. It was close to the road. And they would walk by and see me in there preaching. They must have thought I was the crazy one, that I'm the one that needed counseling. But I learned that when I practiced, I preached better on Sunday. And all the things you have to do, the number one thing you must be good at. You are judged more by how you preach than any other thing you do. Preach and be there in the big events when your people need you. And now there's a lot more to it than that, but those are the two things. They're going to remember how you preached, and they're going to remember when you showed up for those special moments in their life, those priestly moments. Maybe it's a birth, a death, a dedication, a wedding, a major sickness, those kind of things. Those are the things they'll remember all their life. And so your Sunday sermon is too important to just prepare it and preach it on Sunday. Because a lot of times what we do, if we haven't worked it through, we're processing it while we're preaching. And our sermons get longer because we're working it out. We're trying to find the best way to say it instead of doing it on Monday or Tuesday or Thursday or whatever. And so I encourage you, don't just practice what you preach, but practice before you preach. Well, that's enough for now. Just a quick shout out to you, a few minutes to visit with you. And I love you, brothers and sisters, and thank you for what you're doing. I'm really rooting for you. I'm really praying for you. I'm praying for you to stay strong and praying for God to give you endurance. I don't know when this is going to stop. I don't know when we're going to get through this, but I know we will get through it. God is faithful, and he will keep us. Keep running to win. Sometimes running is just getting up and putting another step forward and pressing through another day. But you're going to win. God's going to see you through. I love you, I honor you, and I respect you, and I'm praying for you. If there's anything I can do to help you, I mean it with all my heart. You call me. Hopefully you know by now, I don't always respond immediately, but I get back to you, and I will return your call if I can't answer at the moment. I care about you, and I'll do anything I can. Hope you have a great day tomorrow. If you have time, make sure you practice your sermon tonight. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.